Okay, my phone just ran out of storage. The message is too powerful. So where was I? I was speaking for like a minute after. So what you should be doing is finding someone that's on the similar or the same vibration or same level as you. What you're doing when you do that instead is changing your connections and changing the people that you started to hang around with. Why? Because you're no longer in the savior complex, because you're no longer feeling like you need to validate someone else's experience to feel better about yourself or to change their experience in general. This sucks because I was almost done with the video and now I need to make a whole nother video. Anyways, I hope this isn't cut off. Where was I? I was so deep in it. I was really locked in. I think I was at the part where when you start to finally accept that you don't need to save anybody, that in fact you shouldn't because you're stopping someone else from growing in the same way that you grew. Even though you're saving them from all this hurt that they're going to experience, the problem is that you're saving them also from the same lessons. You're saving them from the teaching of themselves, the understanding that they need to come to because of what they experienced. And how else to do that other than through experience? A lot of us are going to say, well, I prefer to be told than to rather experience it. But how many of us actually listen and ingest internally what people say rather than experience what was said? And they're like, okay, wait, something needs to change. Something needs to be different because I don't want to go through that again. I felt the feelings, I thought the thoughts, and I didn't like it. Yet someone just a week ago told them, hey, don't do this because this is going to happen. Not everyone is ready to accept the words as face value and as deep and cut as they will be in real experience. When you start to accept that you aren't in savior mode or that you are in savior complex mode, in a mode of superiority in some form and shape, you change the way that you look at people. Because again, you're going to know, wait a second, this person is going through this. I went through this exact moment 2 years ago, and I know exactly how to help them. I know the exact steps that it requires to help them. But until that person decides to say, hey, Augustine, it's me, Augustine, I need help. What is your advice? What is something that I can do to change something about this? And that's when you can help them. That's when it's no longer savior complex. That's when it's no longer giving the extra effort that they don't require, that they never wanted. You can, just like, especially with your kids, I would say savior complex is a lot in your children, if you have any children. You want to save them from all the hardship and worries and the experience that you experience not only as a child, but as an adult, and the lessons that you learn through just living life and getting older and becoming more mature and changing your mindset and having a different outlook on the life that you experience. But it is your responsibility to guide your children, but it's not your responsibility to narrow their path. If they want to narrow their path, they will narrow it on themselves. They will thin out the weeds, but only with guidance, not through forceful action and savior complex, with the savior mentality of saying, I know better, so do this differently. I know that if you do this, this is going to happen. So matter of fact, you're grounded because I don't want you to go outside and do this thing. Or you're in trouble because of this and this. Oh, I used to do this when I was a child, and I could foresee that happening to you. The point of life is to experience it, the good and the bad. And if you limit someone's experience to only good, then they will only experience bad as they grow up and as they experience their adulthood. Now, why is that? Why would saving someone and expose them to only good things inhibit them to experience only bad things, because they didn't learn the difference internally, because they never knew right from wrong, because they never experienced wrong. So then how do you really put a line in the sand of what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad, if you only experience good? And if that's the case, then everything you experience is good and everything you learn is good. So it's important, unfortunately, for us as human beings to experience the hurt and the bad and the negativity and to sit in it, even if it takes you years. And I know you're going to be like, but if only someone would have told me differently. I'm right here. I'm right here. Excuse me. I am telling you differently. Other people are telling you differently. But the reason that you're experiencing this new vibration, this new mentality, this new mindset of how you are, of how you're interacting with others, of how you're saving others, of how you're being saved, is because you're open to it. It's because you're finally ready. It's because you're finally changing and growing past your limit, past the barrier that you set through. There's a small, there's a small crack in your barrier where it's like, what if? What if? What if? I think David Goggins says that, what if my experience was different? What if I changed something about myself? Would my connection change? Would my future change? Would my actions change? Would my mindset change? Yes. First of all, yes. But it takes the ugly. It takes the uncomfortability. It takes the place that you don't want to be in to be in. I was in a workplace. I was in a place that I worked. There was a place that I worked at for 3 years, and I hated that job. Like, I not hated. That's a very strong word. I resented the job so much that I would change the way I acted in overall to be able to cope and mask the pain that I was feeling from work and at work. And why? I would say that workplace that I pushed myself through, I made sure that I stayed there and that I went there every single day through the pain, through the struggle, through the hardship, through the ugly, through the neglect. And I put on my best work. I put on my best performance. I put on my happiest attitude. And when I finally took my leave of that job and left it the correct way, where the connection wasn't severed, and in fact, they welcomed me back with open arms whenever I decide to go back. I'm not going back. No way in hell. But the point is that I took the higher road that I could have not taken. The point is that once I left, right? Because I left a while ago, but after I left, I reflected upon my 3 years of working in that workplace and overworking, putting too much effort, putting more effort than is necessary, exerting myself, working day and night for this job, saving people, helping people, teaching people, doing all this thing in the name of a company. Other than myself, the same things that I should have been giving myself, I was giving to a company. I was giving to $1. So when I left this workplace, I realized, oh my gosh, I worked here for 3 years, and this was the biggest, the most surmountable amount of change that I have ever been through. I put myself through hell. And all of a sudden, I realized that all that hell, all that hardship, all that worry and defeat in myself, yet I showed up every single day with my best work. That made me grow. That changed my life forever. I worked through so much unhealing on my own because I put myself through so much uncomfortability. So many scenarios where I gotta put on a nice face. in the face of my own adversity, in the face of my own opposite emotions and thoughts, so that I didn't dilute or inhibit someone else's experience of the workplace, because it's not my job. In fact, it only destroys my job more if I make people leave the job, right? If I make effort to do the exact opposite of what I'm already trying to achieve. And because I left my workplace in such a good state, in such a way where I will be welcome back, I didn't burn any bridges. In fact, I'm 1000% positive that every single person that I've ever met there will remember me, not only for the work I did, but for the positivity I brought to the workplace, for the happiness, for the discipline, for the motivation, for the eagerness of teaching and of disciplining myself. If I didn't experience this 3 years of work, I wouldn't have been a harder worker. I wouldn't have exposed myself to my mindset of, okay, I can actually do this. I actually have the discipline. I actually can show up every single day. Or changing my mindset towards like, well, it's not really the work that I get. It's the way that I get the work. If I show that I'm eager to work, people are going to give me more work. And what does that only do? That makes me more disciplined. That makes me stronger, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally, especially if I have a good attitude about it. But when you start saving people from their own suffering, they don't learn these lessons that are impossible to learn throughout or without experience. And there's so much more. That's just your workplace. If you start to see every moment as a learning experience or a growing moment or a teaching experience to yourself or for others' growth, then you just step back. Let them grow. Let them change for themselves. In the same way that you did for yourself. Just let it be automatic for them. If you decide to be in a relationship with somebody, look for these traits, look for these signals. It's super easy, especially if you've already been in these cycles of life, to spot when someone is in them, to spot when someone is in people pleasing, to spot when someone is in a bad mental image of themselves, or all they do is criticize themselves. And you can only do so much for another person before it becomes repetitive and before you see that your own efforts are making you tired or making you more drained or making you feel like, ugh, I don't want to be around this person anymore because they're like this. Well, they were like that in the first place. You should have never been in this situation. You should have never been in that scenario. But you decided to do that because you thought that you could be beneficial. When in fact, they should have sought you out for that benefit. This is why it's important to not be in savior complex, to not be in savior mode, to not inhibit or distract or barricade someone else's growth. Because it's not your job to save someone. It's each of our own to save ourselves. My name is Augustin. If you liked the video, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and this is just for clarity. Thank you for being here.